Good evening, everyone. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Um, I have a lot on my mind, and I feel like I can't rest until I share it. Uh, I imagine 100 years from now, our our descendants will be learning in school about us, um, about this time when we're going through this fourth industrial revolution and the reordering of the world, the reordering of the world order, um, us being forced to or compelled to adopt to these new technologies that include tracing us and tracking us and storing our data and storing everything that we transmit um, digitally for life. And I don't know if anybody else sees what I see, but I'm just going to share what I see. Um, I know a lot about colonialism and hi, Michael. Hey, how are you? Yeah, Michael Henderson, good person. Check him out here in Austin, Texas. Um, so I know a lot about colonization, colonialism, all of that. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. How we, I guess what, 99% of people in the world are actually our ancestors in the sense that we're experiencing what our ancestors experienced. To be more succinct, we're going through this massive technological change, and there are people way up high who we don't know and they don't know us. And to them, we're just numbers, we're statistics, we're on charts. And they have plans for the world and for how the world ought to run. And they're implementing their plans that they've had for decades now, if not longer. And there's a lot of collateral damage already. And we are being indoctrinated or have been indoctrinated into seeing the world in very specific ways. And we've been indoctrinated in society to not identify with ourselves as spiritual beings, but we're supposed to identify with this. This is who I am. That's all. And so I'm just going to share what I see. You can take it or leave it. I'm not trying to force anybody to believe anything, but I'm just giving a different perspective. I find it for myself an empowering perspective, because if it doesn't empower you, that's fine. Um, but I'll just offer it. We have technocrats now in the world. I don't know that. Oh no, why does my. Hold on, I'm gonna. Why now? See, when I start talking, she wants my attention. My goodness. Anyway, I'll try to ignore it because I really want to get this out. Um, and yes, there is somebody on the other end, so she's not alone. How do I put this? Basically, wherever the United States goes, the rest of the world goes. That's why everybody is keeping track minute to minute what's happening in this country. And I believe that the United States, not only is it the most powerful country in the world, but it is the most free. Now, this is my opinion. If the United States, if we lose our freedoms, the rest of the world is going to follow. And there are massive battles going on simultaneously right now in this third world war that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Now, our ancestors, it doesn't matter where in the world most of our ancestors came from. I mean, they could have been in Europe, they could have been in Africa, in the Americas, in Asia, wherever. All of our ancestors have experienced at some time or another being oppressed by a group of people that's like, like a drop in the ocean of humanity that rules them. And this is just the story of humanity. Right now, what we're going through, what we're experiencing is technocrats. Our government is in this big battle to survive, and there are technocrats and these big multinational corporations that are basically in charge of everything. They've bought people in the government. They've done it for a long time. We've been kind of asleep at the wheel, and this is what we have. But the collateral damage to the average person has been massive, right? So thus far, 210,000 Americans have died um, with coronavirus. And I don't know what the percentage is now, but I know that when it was around, I don't know, 196 or 194,000, just 6% died of coronavirus alone. And in any case, the vast majority of those people, like, I don't know what percentage of those people died alone? What percentage of those people died after having been in a coma? What percentage of those people were isolated before they died? What percentage of those people had between 3 and 6 underlying conditions? And why did they have underlying conditions? Because under natural circumstances, we would live, we would eat, we would grow our own food, we would trade and be healthy. And oh, another thing is our lifespans weren't as long as they are right now. I think the median American life expectancy is maybe 76 years old. Anyhow, so I'm saying all that to say we need to put everything into perspective, because with these coronavirus lockdowns, we're not hearing from the media the really the numbers of people who have been pushed into poverty, the numbers of people who are now homeless, the numbers of people who died alone, the numbers of people who've committed suicide, the numbers of people who are severely depressed now, the numbers of people who now have substance abuse issues or have relapsed into substance abuse, the numbers of people who, people experiencing domestic violence. I mean, I see it here and there, but the mainstream media is totally obsessed with coronavirus, COVID-19. And this is something that's been brewing since like the 1950s, after Americans adopted, eating a lot of plant seed oils and a lot of sugars and processed foods and all of this. So this is the health crisis that we have has been decades long in the making. I feel like I'm digressing a little bit, but anyway, back to us living what our ancestors lived, and back to the fourth industrial revolution. There are people at the top of the pyramid who are very, very powerful, who really don't give a damn about us, never have, never will. And they have implemented policies over the decades that have degraded our soils, degraded our health, degraded our mental health, and degraded our ability for most people to live really well and comfortably. And with this coronavirus lockdown, and I was even writing about it before the lockdown, I was like, this is going to be a disaster, and it's going to take a very long time to recover. I wonder when my ancestors were experiencing colonization, or they were experiencing slavery, what sorts of conversations they had with each other. And I wonder how similar the conversations they had then are that we're having now. I think it's a good thing that we're celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. However, I also feel like it's somewhat of, no, it's good to celebrate it, but there's a conversation that we need to have around it, which is around how right now um, we're going through a process of, I'm not going to use the S word, but confinement, more and more confinement. And whereas in the olden days, people could be confined easily through very physical type of warfare, right? Like throw people in jail, whip them, chain them, chop off their necks, shoot them, whatever. And it was a very physical sort of a confinement. Um, because technology is so advanced now, especially with digital technology and the internet and information and algorithms being tailored to each one of us, the the confinement and the limits are more on our minds than on our bodies. And in a way that's even easier, it's an easier way to control us. So I'll give you an example. Um, One of the strongest public service messages that we got at the beginning of this coronavirus lockdown was, if the people who don't want to wear masks are selfish, and if they don't wear a mask, they're going to kill somebody's grandma. They're very selfish people. Well, the people who don't wear masks tend to be people who did an enormous and an extraordinary amount of research. And they concluded, like I did on my own, that um, number one, masks weren't that effective, and that they would wear them when it was really necessary, but it's not necessary to wear a mask all the time. So the public service message was, people who don't wear masks are sociopathic, and there were all these articles coming out, and then there was all sorts of censorship on Facebook, and they created this dynamic where, you know, people who don't wear masks are evil, stupid, dumb, backwards people, somewhat savage, uneducated, and the people who wear masks are good people, are caring people, are empathetic people. Now, the people who wear masks trust government a lot and trust the medical community a lot. And it's very important to show that they care, so they're wearing masks. Now, I want you to track with me over here a little bit. The conversation for why, in the United States especially, so many people, well, first of all, not that many people, because they were saying they're expecting 2 million deaths of coronavirus, and it's like 210,000 deaths of coronavirus. And the conversation in the media is about the number of cases, but they're not talking about the death rate. So the more number of cases we have, the death rate falls and falls and falls. And the curve was flattened a long time ago. But the conversation about why so many Americans suffer from autoimmune diseases and chronic diseases and obesity and just overall poor health, that conversation is not being had, or it's being suppressed, especially by these, you know, it's like the social media platforms. But we're being given very specific information about what to feel about particular groups of people. So right now we're very much, our headspace is filled with coronavirus and racism and systemic racism and microaggressions and, you know, prejudice and violence and police brutality. But when you look at the entirety of what's happening in the United States when it comes to economics and health, it's an entirely different reality. And I've said this many times, and I'm just going to keep saying it like a broken record. These algorithms are creating worlds that we live in. We're living more and more and more in digital world, and we're not living our own lives. So The lockdowns have been disastrous, and some people have been afraid to even, you know, visit their elderly family members. And we have a massive mental health crisis and many other crises and financial crises. And I feel like this is just the beginning. Number one, I feel like we human beings are a lot more resilient than, you know, the authorities or the controllers thought we would be. So number one, we're a lot more resilient. We're a lot more creative. We're a lot more innovative. We're a lot more resourceful. Um, we're tougher than they expected us to be. Um, but we don't deserve this, and we never did. Sweden is a country that never had a lockdown, and it didn't mandate masks. And I wish, well, I think I can find the short documentary about how Sweden is the number one country in the world for adopting um, microchipping. I believe it was a BBC documentary. I might be wrong, but there was a woman journalist who went to Sweden, and she was talking about Swedish society, and they've always been, not always, but for a very long time, early adopters to technology. And there was this, I mean, a big building, a hall or something like that, where people were having these, you know, microchip parties, and somebody would go up, people go up, they get the microchip over here, they would laugh, they would celebrate. And the journalist followed a couple of people, but um, there was a man and his 16-year-old daughter, and she was talking to them, and um, she asked them, well, why do you want to be microchipped? And they were like, oh, you know, it's easy. Don't need a key. We don't need this. We don't need that. We don't need to carry a credit card. We're not afraid of things being stolen from us. Everything's right there. You know, if I'm lost or something, I can be found easily. There are all these amazing benefits. So, like, you know, I go to my front door and I put my hand out like this, and it opens my car, everything. And then she asked, well, aren't you concerned about your data being stolen, right? If you're, you know, it's like your passport, your ID, your social security card, um, all of your banking, all your banking information, your investments account, everything is like in this little microchip over here. And the dad was like, oh, I'm not worried about it at all. And the journalist was just like, you're not? Like, and I'm thinking, he's not worried. He goes, oh, it's not a problem. I mean, as long as nobody gets too close. You know, I don't remember if he said 6 feet, but he said, as long as people, you know, keep their distance and they don't get too close, it's fine, nothing to worry about. And then I thought about this. I was like, oh, this, okay, I get it. So the structure of society in Sweden, like if you talk about Europeans, like Swedish people are like the polar opposites of like Italians, for instance, like Italian culture, very close, kissy kissy, huggy huggy, you know. There are typically three generations that live in a household together, but Swedish society is very different. If you're, unlike in the United States, if you're a young Swede and you're single and you're a professional, you're going to have your own apartment. You're not going to have housemates like in the United States. So there's already that distance. And they just culturally, they're more, I don't know what you call like standalone or whatever. And so there was no reason for a mandate for people to socially distance because they do it already. And they're just, I mean, all this, I understood. I understood. Anyway, I'm going to roll it back to the beginning. When I was talking about this fourth industrial revolution, I consider these technocrats to be the colonizers of us today, right now. We're being colonized. And I know that's a very hard thing for some people to take um, because it means we're not as free as we think we are. But if you really, I mean, this is not about, I'm not even going to say I believe. That's, I see it. I see. Um, and I think that this is just the story of humanity. Like we just keep going through these cycles, and we're in this cycle right now. Um, I I just wonder about what it's going to be like, a few hundred years from now when our descendants, they're in school and they're talking about. I mean, what are they going to call these technocrats? Um, we could call them colonizers because that's exactly what they're doing. And um, there's, I don't know any way, I don't know any other way to have our, to be able to like be free and within the, however free that we can be, other than by bypassing these algorithms and talking to people and listening to people. I keep going back to that. The more I do it personally, the more free my experience of life is, because I don't fear anybody. I just don't fear anybody. I have absolutely no fear. I don't fear racism. I don't fear white supremacy. I don't fear. Um, I just I don't fear, because when I look at the news media, to me, most of it is theater, and um, what they should be reporting on, they're not reporting on, or they're spinning it, or it's a really terrible thing, and they're not just showing us the facts. They're like glossing it over and putting some icing on it, and like what do they call it? Putting lipstick on a pig. Um, but the only way to really, really know what's going on is to get out there and ask questions and meet people and ask them, what do you really believe? What is your belief system? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to not do? Because I know that most of us have far, far, far more in common with each other than we have difference. And the people who basically control this world have pit us against each other, and the very evils that they've visited upon us when it comes to pollution, air, water, land pollution, denaturing the soils, selling us poisons, packaging food that's poisonous for us, that causes all sorts of, and don't even get me started on the pharmaceutical industry. But these very people are telling us, like, they destroy our health, and then they're telling us that we're the ones who are destroying health. If you get what I'm saying, right? So we're walking around with masks, and we're afraid of each other, and we see everybody else as a petri dish and a danger to us. But the very people who've created these mask mandates, all these different mandates, and shut down businesses, and destroyed lives and destroyed livelihoods, and created tremendous, mental health problems, and also the, what is it, the disillusion of society. Like, we don't have that cohesion that we used to anymore. Those very people, um, they have their parties together, they go to their clubs, they travel, and they don't wear masks. They don't. And every now and again, somebody catches them and catches them on film. But this, like, we have to understand, like, really what's going on. Um, and normally the person who's like pointing the finger and blaming the most, and I've said this before about blame and shame, usually those people are the ones who are hiding something, and they're hiding something significant, and they're trying to put their shame on us. So you may not believe me, but I highly recommend going to the WHO website, going to the CDC website, going to the NIH website, and reading the data and looking at the statistics. and really understanding data and statistics and asking, why do they keep talking about the what is it, case, the number of cases? Of course, the number of cases are supposed to get more and more, but why are they not talking about the mortality rate? Because that's key. That's key. Um, so happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Um, I think it's really important to report on history just as factually as possible, and with some emotion, but not too much, because I think every one of us human beings who was created by God with equal worth, um, we can all fall into the exact same traps as everybody else before us has, and the people who will come after us will, if we're not aware and if we don't have the consciousness of the traps that we can fall into. And one of the traps is identifying so much with ourselves as being victims of other people, which is true, or our ancestors were victimized, and our ancestors victimized people as well. And sometimes it was on a massive scale, and sometimes it was just very subtle, but it happened. But let's not throw out one history for another. It's really important to look at all of it to the best of our ability. I know nobody will be perfect, but look at it as this human drama, and try to discover the causes, what causes people to be oppressors of other people, what were the world events, what were the beliefs that people had at the time, what were the limits, um, and also wonder, what will our descendants say about us a couple of hundred years in the future? Will they look at us and shake their heads and go, how could those people be so ignorant? How could they be so blind to other people's pain? Are we okay with the future generations looking at us? Or would we rather the future generations say, you know what, these people found themselves in these circumstances, and they used their brains and they used their hearts, and this were, oh yeah, the gut as well, and everything synced up together, and then they knew the correct course of action to take. So there's so much more that I want to talk about, but I want to leave it at that. Just trying to look at things, but in a dispassionate way, so that we're not creating, I don't know what the word is. We're not creating like angels of one group and demons of another group. Because believe me, our ancestors, wherever in the world they were, who went through something similar, and it was far more visceral and, what do you call it, violent, that they went through. Even they, had arguments with each other, and even they didn't see things the same way, and they had arguments about how we're going to get ourselves out of this mess, because it doesn't matter how high our technology becomes, and all of these things that technology has brought us, and making life so much easier on a physical level. Human beings are human beings. We haven't changed one bit. Our human nature hasn't changed at all. And it doesn't matter what era that we're living in, each one of us is responsible for ourselves, and for being true to ourselves, and for being able to, put our head above the crowd and see the lay of the land, and, make more resourceful choices than we would have otherwise. So that's all I have to say about that. Hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and tomorrow around noon, I'm going to get on my Facebook room if anybody would like to join me and have conversation about this fourth industrial revolution and algorithms and artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things and even deep fakes as well, and how technology is just totally rearranging everything, and how can we stay centered and maintain our humanity um, within that environment. Okay, good night. Thanks.